At the MGM Grand Garden Arena in Las Vegas on the 14th of November 2009, 4,200 people filled every seat from the floor to the upper tier. The air inside carried the weight of anticipation and the smell of chalk and leather. It was a martial arts invitational, a gathering of practitioners from 17 different disciplines, hosted under the banner of a charitable foundation whose name no longer matters. What matters is who was in the room. Conor McGregor was 21 years old. He stood 6 feet even and weighed 168 pounds of structured muscle built through 11 years of continuous competitive training. His record in full contact striking competition at that point was 14 wins, 1 draw, 0 losses. He had won a junior European championship at 19. He had been written about in 3 separate combat sports publications that year alone, each article using the same word, prodigy. His hands moved at a documented speed that placed them in the 93rd percentile of all tested strikers in his age bracket. His left cross had been measured at 940 pounds of force per square inch in a university study conducted 6 months prior. He was not a spectacle. He was a fact. He had come to Las Vegas not to compete, but to demonstrate. The Invitational had invited him as a featured exhibitor. He was, by every available measure, the most credentialed young striker in the building. In 12 seconds, with 2 movements and 1 decision he would not make, the 4,200 people in that arena would go completely silent. Nobody in that building understood yet what they were about to witness. Nobody except one man sitting in the 4th row, wearing a plain gray canvas jacket over a white undershirt, his cap pulled low, his hands folded in his lap. He had arrived without announcement. He had taken his seat without ceremony. He had not stretched. He had not warmed his hands. He had not spoken to the man sitting beside him, a retired judo competitor named Harold Reeves, who would later describe the evening in a memoir that sold 40,000 copies in its first printing. The man in the 4th row had been invited as a guest of the foundation. His name had not appeared in the program. The staff member who had handed him his lanyard had not recognized him. He sat with the patience of someone who had been waiting in rooms his entire life, and who had learned across decades that rooms always eventually revealed what they were made of. Conor McGregor took the demonstration floor at 9:17 in the evening. He had earned his moment. Let that be stated plainly. He was not a fraud. He was not a pretender padding his credentials with the inflated currency of rumor. What he could do, he had done repeatedly in front of judges and witnesses and official record keepers. He moved across the demonstration mat with the specific ease of a man who had spent more hours in controlled combat than most people had spent in classrooms. He shadowboxed at 3/4 speed and the audience could see, even at that reduced pace, something that made experienced practitioners sit slightly forward in their seats. The tournament director, a man named Gerald Sims who had run sanctioned martial arts events for 22 years, stood at the edge of the floor with a clipboard he was no longer writing on. He watched McGregor move and set the clipboard down on the table beside him without looking at it. McGregor completed his demonstration to sustained applause. He had earned that applause. The thing that happened next was not caused by his skill. It was caused by what skill, in certain men, when it arrives young and travels fast and meets no resistance for long enough, eventually becomes. He was handed a microphone. He scanned the room with the particular confidence of someone who has never entered a space and felt unwelcome in it. He thanked the foundation. He thanked the audience. He said several things about the future of combat sports that were intelligent and well constructed, and then he paused. The pause was approximately 3 seconds long. "I've been asked," he said, "what it would take to challenge me. What kind of man? What kind of fighter? What kind of background?" Another pause. "The honest answer is, I don't know yet. I haven't met him." He smiled. It was not an unkind smile. That made it worse. "What I do know is that age is a wall nobody climbs. I respect the legends of this room. Every one of them built something real. But what they built," he said, "is a museum. And I don't fight in museums." The room adjusted its weight. "If Chuck Norris walked in here tonight," he said, "I'd shake his hand. I'd mean it. And then I'd remind him that I was born the year he stopped being relevant. Because the truth," he said, lowering the microphone slightly, "is that He's too old. They all are. The era is over. He was not looking at the fourth row when he said it. Harold Reeves was. He would write later that he felt the temperature in the seat beside him change before he saw any movement. He would write that the man in the gray jacket unfolded his hands from his lap with a slowness that somehow communicated more urgency than any sudden motion could have. He would write that he had spent 31 years in competitive martial arts, and that he recognized, in that unhurried unfolding, a quality he had only encountered 6 or 7 times in his life. He would not name the quality directly. He would only write that when he saw it, he always knew to be quiet. If you want to find out what happened in the next 12 seconds, make sure you are subscribed and drop a comment below telling us where in the world you are watching from. The man in the gray canvas jacket removed it. He folded it once across the middle, lengthwise, and set it across the back of the seat to his left with the deliberateness of someone setting a book on a shelf rather than dropping it on a table. He straightened his white undershirt. He removed his cap and placed it on top of the jacket. His hair underneath was gray at the temples. He was 59 years old. He stood 5 feet 10 inches and carried 180 pounds on a frame that, in the plain fluorescent light of the arena's lower level, appeared entirely unremarkable. He wore dark trousers and flat-soled street shoes. The crowd nearest him recognized him first. The recognition traveled outward from the fourth row in both directions like a current moving beneath the surface of still water, invisible until it reached the edge. By the time it reached the upper tier, the floor had already shifted. McGregor, who was accepting a water bottle from an assistant at the edge of the mat, turned when the assistant stopped moving. He looked toward the fourth row. He looked at the man walking toward the mat. He looked at the man's shoes. Chuck Norris stepped onto the demonstration floor. He did not raise his hands. He did not take a stance. He stood at a distance of approximately 14 feet from the younger man, and he stopped walking and he looked at him. He had already lost. He just did not know it yet. A fight is not two bodies occupying the same space aggressively. A fight is a conversation about distance. And like all conversations, it is decided before the words begin by who is listening and who is only waiting to speak. The man who controls the gap between himself and his opponent controls not just where the fight goes, but whether the fight happens at all. Chuck Norris had been studying that gap since 1958. He had spent 51 years learning, with a precision that no measuring instrument could fully capture, exactly how far away from another man he needed to be in order for nothing that man did to reach him. McGregor threw the first movement at 1 second. It was not an attack. It was a read. A short, explosive step shift toward the inside, designed to trigger a response that would tell him something about what he was dealing with. It was the correct opening. It was exactly what a trained, intelligent striker does when facing an unknown quantity. Chuck Norris did not step back. He did not redirect. He moved 2 inches to the left and 3 inches forward, and the step that had been designed to close distance somehow did not close any. McGregor was aware of it. The sound person in the left wing of the arena had been holding a boom mic extended at full arm length. She lowered it 6 inches without realizing she had done it. At second 3, McGregor threw his first genuine commitment. The left cross. The measured strike. 940 pounds of documented force traveling on a direct line toward a target that had been stationary 0.6 of a second before. It did not land. Not because it was slipped in any dramatic sense. Not because of a parry or a block. But because the precise location the strike was targeted at was no longer occupied when it arrived. The older man had moved 1/2 step to the outside, and the cross traveled past the space where his jaw had been, and found nothing. McGregor reset. Gerald Sims, at the edge of the floor, had not picked up his clipboard. At second 6, the second attempt came. A level change and a forward push intended to close distance and initiate a clinch. Because McGregor had processed enough information in 5 seconds to understand that he was not going to find the target standing upright at range, and that a different conversation needed to start. It was the correct adjustment. It was the intelligent move. Chuck Norris placed his right hand on McGregor's lead shoulder at the precise moment of the level change. Not to strike, not to push, but to redirect the momentum by 3 degrees. 3 degrees was enough. The level change became a forward lean with nothing to attach to. The clinch found air. At second 9, McGregor's third attempt was a low kick to the lead leg, thrown from the outside, designed to give him information he could not get from the upper body exchanges. It was textbook. It was technically correct. The lead leg was not there. The older man had taken a half step back with his right foot, and the kick swept across a leg that had been withdrawn before the decision to throw had been communicated from McGregor's brain to his planting foot. Conor McGregor stopped moving. He stood on the demonstration mat, and he was not winded, and he was not hurt, and he had not been touched. That was the point. He had thrown his 3 best opening investments, calibrated and adjusted, and nothing had connected, and he had not been countered, and he understood in the specific silence of that understanding that he was not in a negotiation. He knew how to win. He looked at the man in front of him. At second 11, Chuck Norris moved, not a full technique, not a scoring combination. 1 step inside the established gap, arriving at a range that neither of them had occupied in the previous 10 seconds, and at that range the older man's right hand was already at eye level, not thrown, positioned, the way you position a key in front of a lock before you decide whether to turn it. It stopped 1 inch from Conor McGregor's left temple. The arena went silent. Not immediately. In layers. The way light leaves a room when the source is dimmed rather than switched off. The upper tier a half second after the floor a half second after the mat immediately. Chuck Norris held the position for 2 full seconds. Then he lowered his hand. He extended it, open, palm up, between them. McGregor looked at it. There are moments in a man's life when he stands at a specific junction, and the road he takes is not determined by what he knows, but by what he is willing to understand about what he does not know. The junction is quiet. Nobody gives a speech at the junction. You simply stand there, and you choose. McGregor reached out and took the hand. He said something. The arena was quiet enough that some people in the first 3 rows would later say they heard part of it, though they could not agree on exactly what. What they agreed on was the cadence, short, direct, and said without excuses. Harold Reeves, who was seated 4 feet away, wrote in his memoir that he heard 4 words clearly. He chose not to print them, writing only that they were the 4 words a young man says when he has encountered something real and has the character to name it. Chuck Norris said 2 words in response. He said them at the same volume he had said everything else that evening, which was nothing. He stepped off the mat. He walked back to the 4th row. He picked up his cap from the top of the folded jacket and fitted it back onto his head. He sat down. The man to his right, Harold Reeves, did not say anything. He reached over and placed 1 hand briefly on Chuck Norris's left shoulder, in the way that witnesses, when they have seen something they understand they will spend years trying to describe, sometimes reach out to confirm the proximity of the real. In the following weeks, the story moved the way stories that lack footage always move. It traveled from the people who were present to the people who knew people who were present, and at each exchange it shed details and gained others, the way water moving over rock loses volume and takes on minerals. Some versions said the exchange had lasted 6 seconds, some said 20, some said Norris had countered rather than simply redirected, which was not accurate. Some versions introduced a verbal exchange on the mat that did not occur. One version, told in a gym in Dublin 3 months later, had McGregor on the canvas, which was not true in any technical sense. Though certain people who were present would argue it was true in every other sense, what remained constant across every version was the silence. Every person who had been in the MGM Grand Garden Arena that night, regardless of what they added or removed from the surrounding story, described the silence the same way. They described it as a specific quality of quiet that a room produces when 4,000 people understand simultaneously that they have witnessed something they will not see again. Gerald Sims gave an interview to a combat sports publication in 2013. He said that in 22 years of running events he had seen 2 or 3 moments that changed the understanding of everyone in the room. He described the 14th of November, 2009 as one of them. He said he had been holding a clipboard and had set it down and had not picked it back up. He said he never really explained, even to himself, why that particular detail stayed with him. He supposed it was because it was the moment he stopped taking notes on what he expected and started watching what was actually happening. Conor McGregor spoke about the evening once, in a podcast interview recorded in 2017. He did not identify the location or the date. He said only that early in his career he had been in a room with someone who had taught him the difference between confidence and understanding, and that the lesson had taken 12 seconds and had cost him nothing physically, and had been worth more than any fight he had won before or since. The host asked him who it was. McGregor said he had promised to keep that to himself. He smiled when he said it. It was a different kind of smile than the one he had worn at the microphone in 2009. What a man can demonstrate on a floor, and what a man understands about a floor are two different educations. The first can be acquired in years. The second takes longer, and it cannot be rushed, and it does not arrive on schedule. And the only teacher it will accept is the moment when what you know meets something your knowledge had not accounted for. Some men, when that meeting happens, reach for an excuse. Some men reach for an explanation. And some men, the rare ones, reach across the space and take the hand that is being offered, and say the 4 words, and begin. Next week we will tell you what happened on a film set in Los Angeles in 1983, when a man with a black belt in 3 disciplines walked onto a closed stage and told the crew that Chuck Norris had been performing his own fights wrong for 15 years. He said it into a live microphone. He said it in front of the director. He said it with 47 people in the room. What happened in the following 40 seconds was recorded in a production log that sat in a studio archive for 2 decades, before anyone understood what they were reading.